All right, guys, welcome back to the Couch Potato General Manager channel. For those of you visiting for the first time, we're glad to have you. Drew, we wrapped up an excellent week in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. We were on location for the vast majority of the festivities throughout the week. Of course, we lost day three due to inclement weather. It was limited to just select members of the media as well as kind of local partners that the Reese's Senior Bowl ultimately interacts with. However, we have notes. We have notes. We want to talk about the winners and losers from the week. We also want to give you guys some additional context in terms of the significance of the Senior Bowl and what to look for. And I think that gets lost in translation quite a bit. That's where I'd like to start, Drew. Going into the Senior Bowl, what are you looking for?
I'm looking for guys to compete. I'm looking for, certain things that I've watched certain players and I say, okay, these are the things that they're good at. These are the things that they're not good at or that I saw on tape. And I'm looking to see, have they improved those things? What I saw on tape, is that what I saw? I want to make sure I can check that box. Looking for guys to improve from day to day. It's a different atmosphere. Essentially, this is kind of like a job interview. You know what I'm saying? Some of your interview is on tape. You know what I'm saying? But there's another part. I guess we can call it the second interview, if you will. You've gotten that opportunity to get through the door and show what you have in a different atmosphere with different teammates, different personnel around. Yeah, man, that's essentially kind of what I'm looking for. Just to see how guys are just in a different place, man.
Yeah, I think all of that is very poignant. You made a point to identify the fact that it is a different environment. You're dealing with players that you're not familiar with. You're dealing with coaches that you're not familiar with. And as a result, you're dealing with terminology and a system that you're not familiar with. We're not talking about your typical off-season and then weekly install. You watch film against the opposition. So people have to take that into consideration. But generally speaking, given all the circumstances, again, given the fact that really for 3 to 4 days, you're really delving into a West Coast offense for the first time, because of course we know the vast majority of the offenses at the NFL level, or rather at the college football level, are spread in nature. They're very simplistic. It's a numbers game, one way, or the other. Whereas the NFL tends to be a little bit more complex, although it's shifting towards more spread principles. So, there's that element, and that's one of the things that I want to caution folks on in terms of when they're looking at the player's performance and individual player's performance, not to keep that in mind, to keep that in the back of your mind from a contextual standpoint in terms of their performance. Those are things that make a difference. Preparation makes a difference. You understand what I'm saying? The other thing I wanted to mention before we get into the individual players, do you agree with it or not, the age-old Allen Iverson quote in terms of talking about practice, that is what matters the most here. The individual interviews, again, obviously you're not doing that in season. You're not meeting with, upwards of 10, 12, perhaps 20 teams, their various scouts and officials throughout a week as you're trying to get prepared for this showcase game. Mannerisms, your body language makes a difference to these scouts. Your attention to detail, your level of engagement throughout the practices. If you're just getting up for game day, coaches won't trust you. They got to see it. They have to see it throughout the week in order to play you on Sunday. You understand what I'm saying? So yes, habits, all those types of things are being quantified and measured and documented throughout the process, right? That's why a lot of people tend to leave. Most personnel, most people who cover the sport, whatever the case may be, they don't even watch the game. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I want to make sure that folks that are watching this video understand that is just a small portion of the evaluation as it pertains to Senior Bowl performances. All right. So with that being said, we're going to start on the offensive side of the ball, and we're going to start with the quarterback position. That is, I guess, really the headline going into Senior Bowl week with all the quarterbacks. You had, of course, Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Carson Strong, Sam Howell, Bailey Zappe. A very impressive list of names. However, the performances were uneven. So, Drew, your thoughts? Who helped themselves among the quarterbacks? Who didn't necessarily make waves? Anything that you think is of particular note based on the interviews that you completed during the media portion of Senior Bowl week? Give me your thoughts on the quarterback position.
So we can start with the interviews. I thought that, and I don't want to pick on anybody, you know what I mean? Because everything is getting analyzed when it comes to those things. That Kenny Pickett and I want to say Malik Willis, those are the guys that really kind of caught my eye in terms of when you asked them a question, they were kind of direct. Malik was he has a little jokester, but and I appreciated that. Kenny Pickett was more of a kind of straightforward.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
I think it went good. I mean, it was the first time a lot of us actually been put together. We were given the playbooks a few days earlier, but I mean, trying to fit a whole playbook and work with people we never worked with, it's just a little, rusty at first, but we're just trying to work together and learn how to work together. That's the most important thing.
Sorry about that.
I'm not even sure that their picks matter. I mean, working with them is working with people that, are at the next level, and that's what we aspire to be. So I feel like it's just being that sponge and trying to learn from whatever we can and take it wherever we go. Because at the end of the day, we don't have a choice. Yeah, he is bringing that juice. I can't tell you everything, though. I just seen the team privacy and stuff. I mean, it's been cool. All those guys are really receptive. They try to give us everything we need to be successful, and they try to, stand behind us. And they know how hard it is to come in a weekend, little preparation, and try to execute every play and every down. So I think they've been really helpful in that part.
Well, so looking forward to seeing him soon.
Did that sort of flash through your mind in your championship game here in Charlotte? He was in the stands.
Yeah, I mean, in the championship game, I'm not really thinking too much outside of winning a championship. Every game, I just think everyone's watching. So, really, that game, I just wanted to win.
How does the system that you played in at Pittsburgh better equipped you in the NFL than most of your previous?
Yeah, I mean, because some of the West Coast terminology coming into this week, hearing a lot of different offenses. I mean, the offense on there right now is the Jets, West Coast. There's a lot of carryover from Coach Whipple's offense. Kind of help streamline the process a little bit. Still a different offense that I'm learning, and it's been fun to learn. But I think it's definitely a benefit for me going to the next level.
What quarterbacks are perfect in the NFL do you like college style?
I think I just like to watch football in general. I just watch a lot of the NFL games and kind of learn from those guys. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is one of the best in the game. Joe Burrow, Mahomes, Herbert's a great player. I mean, there's so many of the guys that I've watched this year that you just kind of watch. You're not watching as a fan, you're kind of a fan. You're watching this, like film, like you're breaking down film to see how you can improve. So I'd say all those guys.
I'm sure you've told the stories before, but did you ever do the fake slide at practice?
Yeah, no, it's just I don't think you can practice something like that and go to a championship game and try to execute it. It's just kind of a natural thing. Can't really tell you why I did it or how I did it. Just kind of came into place like that.
What's more?
Yeah, I think the game really slowed down for me. I kind of streamlined the process of preparing and watching film, being able to take that to the game field and execute at a high level. Also we have great players around me, on the outside, and we got a tight end, Lucas Pearl, and our back stepped up huge. So I think it was really a team effort, and we all really flourished this year.
Yesterday's practice or playing Alabama or Georgia?
I would definitely say playing Alabama or Georgia. A little bit more pressure on those games than there is right now. Right now, I'm just going out there having fun, showing what I can do. And we don't have as many plays in as we did Alabama or Georgia right now. So it's really just going out there, trying to execute the offense, stay competitive.
Speaking of Alabama and Georgia, those teams, defenses in college football are, for the most part, a little bit more complex than in the NFL. There's a lot more spot job and stuff like that. So what do you think is going to be the biggest learning curve for you going into the game?
I think for me, one, obviously the speed of the game as it is anyone else. Two, it's just really understanding, how smart the defensive players can be, how much film they actually study, the little nuances of what they see in a quarterback. Maybe it's my drop, or maybe it's my stance, or whatever gives you a little tell. So the NFL players are a lot smarter than the college players. So they can't keep it simple, but they're also way better too, so it makes it easier.
Have you had a chance to meet with the Carolina Panthers while you've been here?
Yeah.
How'd that go, and what's your strategy when you go into these meetings with teams?
All my interviews have gone well. And my strategy that Jordan Palmer told me, Jim Nagy told me, and my mom told me is go out there and just be yourself. Because the other day we had 16 meetings with teams, each with 15 minutes each. And if you do the quick math, that's 4 hours. So if you go out there and put on a show or try to put on a front for someone, and try to do that for 16 teams for 4 hours, you're going to wear yourself out. So just really going there, being myself, just showing them, what I know mentally. They can see what I do physically. So I'm just showing them who I am as a man, who I am as a person, where I came from, is what's most important.
I thought watching through the practices and through the game, you could see a difference between what the two, I want to say, air raider offenses in terms of Nevada with Carson Strong and Western Kentucky, Bailey Zappi, in terms of when they had to turn their back to the quarterback, do that play action.
Back to the defense?
Back to the quarterback. Back to the defense. Mm-hmm. I thought they struggled in terms of play action. Thought it took I'd say struggled. Took a little bit longer to kind of process what was going on. I thought Ritter was kind of the same way, but just not at the level of those two guys. I thought Howell, Pickett, and Malik, to me, I thought they were very comfortable doing that. I put Ritter in there too. Let me throw him in there too. I think he was probably fourth in terms of Pickett, Howell, and Willis. I thought everyone had their day in terms of the practices. I thought, to me, Howell was probably the most consistent in terms of when you combine all of the practices together.
Really?
I think he might have struggled a little bit in the third practice, but I thought he was the most consistent when you put everything together. I liked Pickett on the third day. I thought Carson Strong and Bailey struggled on that third day, reviewing the film that we got to see. Hush, hush. And I think I thought Ritter was okay, but in terms of the game, I thought, and people may kill him for it, I thought Howell played very well. Except for the time where he trying to hold on to the ball. But I want to go back to what you were talking about in terms of looking at everything and looking at the context of everything. These are guys who are going out there. They've learned the offense essentially in a week. They're not going to know everything, guys. Everything has to work for them to get the ball out, right?
Sure.
Offensive line has to block. Receivers got to be where they're supposed to be.
Yep.
And things may be a tick slower than you want to be. And that's kind of what it looked like for Howell at times. And he held onto the ball, but when he was able to see it, he threw it. Right? Kind of where I fall with those quarterbacks.
Yeah, I had a little bit different take. I think partly because my expectations were higher for Howell in particular. Yeah, you can see the flashes, obviously, and I'll say this: they didn't get a whole lot of opportunities to really push the ball down the field. They really didn't.
Nobody did.
Nobody did. I mean, the Senior Bowl just kind of placed an emphasis, or rather, really illuminated how deep this edge rushing class is, and we're going to get to that. This going into this particular draft class, we already thought that it was a defense first, defense laden draft class. A lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. There's no question about that, and the Senior Bowl really re-emphasized that for me. You know what I mean? And there were some guys that I wasn't terribly familiar with that really impressed me as well. And those quarterbacks, they were under duress. They were under duress in the game, and even in the practices. And then we had some weather, so we got a little bit of everything. And again, that's the benefit. That's the benefit of those three practices. We those guys actually had some adversity. They had some adversity, but I caution folks. Even though Howell, like I said, I saw it through a little bit different lens than you did. Even though I thought Howell didn't do anything to actually help himself, I don't think he hurt himself either. There are individuals who, again, everybody has their own opinion. Everybody sees it through a different lens. Who feel like his stock might be down, and I can't go that far. I can't go that far for all the things we just mentioned at the top of this video, right? It wasn't a pure face plant. You understand what I'm saying? And of course, I've seen guys like Davis Webb, win MVP of the Senior Bowl, and then of course, you juxtapose that against his tape, and it's like, no, that's not an NFL quarterback right there. Right. Don't put that draft capital into that. So again, you have to kind of weigh it with a grain of salt. But from my perspective, I thought Malik Willis perhaps was the most consistent throughout the practices. He himself, and again, you can attribute some of that to him not seeing the field particularly well, receivers not winning, offensive line breaking down. I think it was a whole gamut there. He didn't get to kind of show his wares from a passing standpoint during the game, but I thought he did the most to actually help himself throughout this process. And in addition to that, we talk about what are scouts looking for. Well, with the advent of Patrick Mahomes, and you see the meteoric rise of Josh Allen over the course of his career and his development, the scouts are focused on traits. They're betting on traits. That's what they're betting on. And nobody in this class quite has what Malik Willis has from an athleticism standpoint and an arm standpoint. He has things to work on, to your point. Obviously, being dropped into a West Coast offense, he acquitted himself well. I thought he got better throughout the week, which is something that I like to see. I like to see progression year to year at the collegiate level, and then certainly within this condensed week, it's great to see a guy get better, build confidence throughout the week. But I'm sure we'll have this conversation a lot throughout the draft process. I don't know that you can drop Malik Willis in just yet and turn him loose. I think he needs an opportunity to develop, and then of course for all these quarterbacks, landing spot is going to be very important, right? The supporting cast, of course, but even more importantly, or just as important, is your coaching, man. Who's developing the quarterbacks? What kind of offense are we running? Are we playing to that individual strength? Do you have a teacher as a play caller, not just a guy who schematically says, okay, we're going to run this play, check to that one, but being able to convey why we're doing things in certain situations. I think that goes a long way. So yes, like I said, I think Malik Willis throughout the practices did the most to help himself. I think, there was a lot to be made in terms of Kenny Pickett's, not necessarily getting his hands measured, this, that, and the other. He had some struggles. He wasn't particularly sharp every single day, but nothing to take me off the fact that I think he does a great job of seeing the entire field and being able to deliver the ball accurately to most parts of the field. I don't believe he threw an incompletion. I know Christian Watson dug one out for him, but he didn't throw an incompletion during the game. I thought Desmond Ridder also helped himself during the game specifically. And when Ridder, what really jumped out to me is that when Ridder's in rhythm, when he's in rhythm, he can get the ball up and down real quick. You know what I'm saying? That there's something there to that, and I think he certainly helped himself. Zappy, Carson Strong, again, Carson Strong is going to be in that conversation about traits. Do you want to bet on traits, right? Zappy, I like what I saw. All things considered.
Gamer.
He's a gamer, man.
Yeah.
He's a gamer. You know what I'm saying? And I think, assuming he falls in, like I said, the same could be said for all these quarterbacks. Assuming he finds a quality situation, I think he can be effective. There were times, especially during the game, late in the game, team is down. This one is already kind of decided, and you could see his command. You could see the cool, calm, and collectiveness in terms of his approach and just letting it fly. I would have liked to have seen either coaching staff really figure out a way to be able to push the ball down the field a little bit more, right? Throw the ball outside the numbers. Everything was inside the numbers. I understand passing games these days work inside out, but if it wasn't a boot off of play action to the tight end, it really wasn't doing a whole lot. And like I said, we're talking about 1 week, not a whole lot of preparation, certainly no game film, and then of course you have the defenses who have never seen a West Coast offense before. You know what I'm saying? These guys at the collegiate level, they don't defend tight ends. You understand what I'm saying? So I take all of that with a grain of salt too. I don't want to put too much emphasis on the fact that, that there may have been a couple of TD passes from Ridder. Because of things of that nature, you have to really get a full context associated with that. I don't think anybody face planted. Among the quarterbacks.
Nobody did their Shea Patterson.
Yes. No.
Oof. Had to throw him in there.
Yeah. Nobody torpedoed their stock. Some teams might be, they may have thrown a little cold water on certain guys, but nobody's played themselves out of being part of that mix associated with the first round, day 2. So let's move right along onto the running back situation. And the best back I thought coming into this week, I remain in that camp, was Jerome Ford out of Cincinnati. I really like what Rachaad White has to offer. I know you like the back from Baylor quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Ford and White move differently. I had an opportunity to interview Jerome Ford, and I asked him, I said, what do you like to run, man? You like inside zone, outside zone, power, whatever the case may be. And he gave a great answer.
Inside zone, outside zone, gap. What you prefer, man?
I like it all.
Don't matter.
Outside zone, gap, whatever will get me in the end zone.
I hear you. All right.
I really like that mentality. It doesn't really matter what you ask me to do. I can do it all. And I'm going to do whatever's going to in the best interest of the team. It was an interesting story associated with Jerome Ford because, of course, we were at the game. We were like, "Where's Ford? Where's Ford? He didn't play."
Right, yeah.
He actually Ubered from Mobile to New Orleans and then flew back to Tampa for the birth of his first child. So that's why he missed the game. Obviously a great reason. The rest of the guys, I think there's some talent there. I think there's some ability there, but nobody blew me away. I know a lot of people like what Tyler Batty did. And they feel like his stock is up, but I saw that on tape. There wasn't anything that really jumped out and surprised me among the running backs. What about you?
I'm gonna go right to my guy, man. I'm gonna go. Well, I can say he's my guy, but he's on my team. I'm gonna go right to Dameon Pierce. This when you look at him.
There you go.
To me, watching him at Florida and just seeing him at the Senior Bowl, he's very balanced, right? And there's nothing that he can't do. He doesn't have, I'd say the one thing you probably want from him is that breakaway speed, right? But I think he's one of those backs, I think I tweeted it. He's just one of those backs where you want him in your backfield, right? You want him in the running back room because he can catch out the backfield. He can run some routes. He has good vision, has patience. And listen, if you don't come with hats to the party, he's going to run through you.
Yeah, he's going to embarrass you.
He's going to embarrass you. And he's a great pass protector. You know what I mean? I kind of forgot about Brian Robinson.
Yeah.
Until I heard the pads studding, and I looked over and I'm like, who is that? Big guy out there laying pads, man.
Oh yeah, that's Brian Robinson.
Brian Robinson, right? You talked about the Baylor running back, Abram Smith, and listen, I love decisive running backs. You see it and you just go. There's no hesitation. And that's what he has. You saw that in the game, saw it in practice too many times. And the other running back that I really liked, and he came on late, was it TJ Pledger?
TJ Pledger.
And there was some early shine from Devontae Price, the Florida International. I don't think he didn't play in the game, and I think he ended up getting injured I'm pretty sure it was in the first practice. But he was probably the running back with the most shine that first day, and then obviously we just didn't get to see him. He's another decisive, taller running back that I like, just the way he moves, the vision that he has. And I think he was maybe at a disadvantage at Florida International in terms of the system they were running, but hey, and he's got hands out the backfield as well.
Quality backs among the Senior Bowl class, and to your point, Pierce, I think probably helped himself the most. Lightly used at UF, but to your point, well-rounded back. And then as far as that breakaway speed, I think he was probably clocked as the fastest player at the Senior Bowl. During the game, not necessarily throughout the practices, but during the game. So yeah, he got a little something. He got a little something behind those pads. He definitely has a little something behind those pads, and you cannot discount the importance of the pass protection that he offers out of the backfield as well. All right. Next up, we have the receivers. I was really looking forward to seeing Jahan Dotson from Penn State, and he didn't show up. He decided against it, and honestly, I think it hurt him. I think it hurts him outside of an injury, and of course, there's always that risk. However, remote it might be, because of course, there's no live hitting going on during the practices. They get a little physical, but generally, you're not going to the ground. You know what I'm saying? And I just felt that he could have. I think he could have cemented a first-round selection.
For sure.
I think he could have absolutely cemented a first-round selection, even if the quarterbacks struggled to get him the ball during 11-on-11s and during the game. I think just the scouts seeing him compete, having the opportunity to interview him, interact with him, and then, of course, doing what he does on the field, I think he absolutely could have cemented his place in the first round. And I think because of the fact that he didn't show up, I imagine him being a day 2 pick. I'm not suggesting that he's going to be, waiting long to hear his name, but I think he gets pushed out of the first round in large part because he didn't show up at the Senior Bowl. So I thought Bo Melton from Rutgers did a good job. Pierce from Cincinnati, he has some game to him. Christian Watson was very impressive. The guy that big who moves like a smaller receiver, soft hands. I was really thoroughly impressed by Christian Watson. The step up in competition didn't make any difference. He was the best receiver out there on the field to me. Velus Jones, I thought Velus Jones did some good things. Calvin Austin, his speed jumped off the page. He had strong practices. I'm not suggesting that there weren't quality performances, but no one really moved the needle for me quite like Christian Watson. I think I felt even though some guys had a strong week and helped themselves, I'm certain that they helped themselves. For me personally, it was Christian Watson and everybody else for me.
So I'm gonna disagree with you here in terms of Jahan Dotson.
Okay.
I'll say this. Currently, you're correct. I think he hurt his draft stock.
Sure.
But I think the combine will change that.
Yeah.
In
all likelihood.
And that's probably what he was told. Hey, man, don't go out there. You know, you might get hurt, blah, blah, blah. You might have a bad week. Then that really hurts you. And then your combine's going to have to bring you back up. I think not going hurts him less had he gone out there and, you know, either got hurt or just had a bad week, right? And I would assume they told him, hey, you just go out there, you do your thing at the combine, you'll be fine. Okay. But Christian Watson, yes, balled out. No exception. I saw some notes where people were like, he didn't really do that. I'm like, were y'all watching the same practice? Was kind of strange. He was the best receiver out there, no question. Guy who plays punt return, kickoff return, special teams. He played all over the field at our North Dakota State. He was a guy to come around and like. There's nothing that he can't do as a receiver, and he can block very well, right? I thought Alec Pierce, who I actually loved and enjoyed watching his tape over there with Desmond Ridder. That is a big, long, big time catch radius, goes up and gets the football. I thought he did very, very well. I think he's a little stiff. I'm okay with it because he has that.
With that body type, you would expect that. And that's why Watson's so impressive, because you think with Watson's body type, he might be a little stiff as well, but not at all. Not at all, man. Yeah.
No, he can move. And the Boise State receiver, I'm gonna kill his name. You know how I do it. Shakir.
Khalil Shakir. He did it.
Khalil Shakir. Yeah. And he was a guy going into it. Like I said, hey, there's a couple guys here where I'm just looking to say, okay,
confirmation. Confirmation.
Yes. And for him, I'm not sure. A lot of what he did at Boise State, to me, that I saw, and you can kill me down in the comment section if I'm wrong, or if I was just looking at the wrong tape. A lot of the stuff that he was doing was schemed open. So I'm like, okay, can you really separate? Can you really get open? Yeah, he can do that. So my bad. I'll take that. Romeo Doubs, boy. We just kept looking at each other, didn't we? We're just like. He can't, if he ain't going deep, or if he ain't running screaming across the field
deep crossers.
He can't get off the line, doesn't have any release moves. And a lot of that is, sometimes some of this stuff has nothing to do with the players. Sometimes it's just, they never saw, they never got challenged. You know what I mean? It's hard to do that when people don't challenge you. And I would assume most teams were scared of his speed, so they play it off, right? And if you give him a free release, you're asking for trouble.
Yes.
But if you challenge him, you probably most likely got him, especially if the play doesn't go on forever, right? Most plays don't. I thought Jalen Tolbert, I thought he might have made himself some money. I actually forgot about him. He was one of the early receivers that I did, I did my research on actually before the season started. And I didn't realize he was that big until I saw him. I thought he was a smaller guy because I know he's got some speed. And I was like, damn, he got speed and height. You know, and he's got a nice little release package getting off the line of scrimmage. He'll go up and get the football. He's South Alabama. You know, that's the school they had the Senior Bowl at, and we'll have it out for
posted. Yeah.
Right. And he showed out. I mean, every time he made a play, you could hear the crowd. Velus Jones Jr. from Tennessee. This is a guy who I wanted to see more from him. Watching the tape, there just wasn't a lot of tape on him, and he's a transfer from USC, if I'm not mistaken, and you can see the flashes at times, and you saw the flashes, at the Senior Bowl. I think this is a guy, his best football is ahead of him. He's not polished, so I think if someone took some time, this is not a guy that you're going to be able to drop into the offense and say, okay, we need you to be our number 2, number 3. I think this is a guy who, he might be your number 4. He is a special teamer, and he's a guy that you're going to have to develop. You'll bear some fruit season 2, but again, it depends on where he goes, what they're asking him.
Landing spot.
Right.
Yeah.
Another guy who I thought was just, he was kind of in the category of Jones Jr. was Trey Turner in terms of, I didn't see a lot. What is he? What's the issue, right? He was kind of in the Doubs category where he just couldn't beat the release. And at Virginia Tech, he didn't see much of press coverage. It was kind of off coverage, and I understand why maybe he didn't show out, at Virginia Tech, dropping passes. I thought he was a guy, if you get the football in his hands, he can make things happen. But I mean, you got to catch the ball and you got to get open for those things to happen, man.
I want to echo your sentiment in terms of Jalen Tolbert. Jalen Tolbert did make a difference. He looked really good. When you're talking about, I think a lot of conversations are centered around Doubs or Jalen Tolbert. It's Jalen Tolbert for me, and it's not particularly close. You mentioned, Doubs, and it was one of the first things that I saw during the one-on-ones. And of course, don't want to put too much emphasis on the one-on-ones. It's one of those things where you're trying to see, okay, are guys coachable? Do they make adjustments from one rep to the next? Do they have short memories? Are they making plays on the football? Do the receivers, have a quality release package? Are they strong at the point, at the catch point? You know what I'm saying? Do they let defenders play through their hands and things of that nature? And that was what was disappointing about Turner and Doubs, is that not only did they struggle to create separation off the line of scrimmage, and let's face it, most corners don't press these days. I don't know why. I'm not sure exactly why that's the case. It would behoove them to do so, but most don't, right? So to your point, if you give Doubs a free release, you're talking about what he does well. He can stretch the field. He can absolutely stretch the field. But to be that size, to have that kind of physical stature and not be physical through the catch point, as a defensive back is making contact and trying to make a play on the ball and being able to bring that in. And then, of course, like I said, being able to get off the line of scrimmage, that was a bit disappointing. Again, in terms of the one-on-ones, like I said, Christian Watson kind of separated himself, and as I mentioned, there were several other guys who did well under those circumstances. But of course, we have to acknowledge that particular drill, right, favors the offense. Right? There's no pass rush associated with the quarterback. There's no shot clock per se in terms of you getting off the line of scrimmage and into your route. There's none of that. The timing isn't an issue there. So of course, the guys that you saw perhaps have success in doing so during the practices, they weren't necessarily able to translate that to the game. Right now, when you're dealing with actual coverage and there's leverage and the boundary, and you have linebackers buzzing underneath, and there's a pass rush bearing down on the quarterback. So all those things you kind of have to put together throughout the course of the week. Now, there are going to be certain elements to players' games that jump off the page, right? And you can see it immediately, whether it be a 1-on-1, 7-on-7, full 11-on-11. It doesn't matter. Right? But oftentimes, especially if you're seeing something that may not necessarily agree with the film, you got to see how that translates to live action at that particular position. I think that's significant. What about the tight ends? That those guys seem to make all the plays during the games, man. What were your thoughts on the tight ends at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, Trey McBride was as advertised. He is the best tight end in the country. And there's nothing that he can't do. Line up, inline, outside, slot, can block, can move. He is the real deal. He is what you're looking for. I don't know that any tight end goes in the first round this year just because of what's going to be there. But if there's going to be a guy, I would think it would be him. I thought that Isaiah Likely from Coastal Carolina, he's essentially just a super athletic tight end, right? Sure. You don't want to throw him in there. You ain't trying to have him block too much. You want to get him out wide. You want to get him against the linebacker, running away from him. The corner's too small, safety's too slow. He's just kind of a mismatch, and that's kind of what he showed at Mobile. He did exactly, in terms of these tight ends, most of them did exactly what I thought they would do. Right. Didn't hurt their stock. They were exactly what I thought they were. Daniel Bellinger, the tight end from San Diego State. I mean, dude, I got in my notes, man. Like he knows where to be, right? He knows where to be in terms of the holes of the defense. Gets that leverage in terms of if he's manned up. When his number to the quarterback, he was a big time player in practice for the quarterbacks. He was just kind of always open. The other tight end I want to speak about is Jake Ferguson. I watched it very, very early. He's the total package. The only thing I would say is he's not gonna run away from anybody.
Sure.
But he's the quintessential tight end from back in the day. Has some game in terms of lining him up out wide if you choose to do that because he has a big body, or if you want to line him up in the slot. But I think you probably want him in line and a guy who's going to be a part of the offensive line, but a guy that can do damage in the passing game, and you saw that in the bowl game.
Yeah, I'd agree with you for most of your recount of the performances of the tight end. Certainly, Jake Ferguson had a solid week and then punctuated it in the Senior Bowl. Basically, led all players in catches, yards, and of course, he had a score as well. Jeremy Ruckert, I thought from Ohio State, I think he helped himself a lot too. I thought throughout the practices he was solid, he was impressive, and did some things. Of course, like I said before, the quarterbacks had a tendency to look for the bigger targets inside the hashes, down the seams, as opposed to pushing the ball down the field outside. And like I said, a lot of that came, due to the fact that they simply didn't have time. They simply didn't have time, or those guys didn't necessarily create separation, or in the case of Doubs and Turner, as we alluded to before, struggled to win off the line of scrimmage. So there's no Kyle Pitts, obviously. Kyle Pitts being the unicorn. It just seems to me like every team in the NFL has about 5 tight ends. You understand what I'm saying? And this is a solid group. This is a solid group. No world beaters per se. No guys who are going to necessarily shock the world from an athleticism standpoint at this juncture. We'll see what happens down the road. But a quality group. And I thought for the most part, I don't think anybody didn't do anything to help themselves. I think everybody helped themselves to some degree.
It's definitely a pick your flavor type of tight end,
sure,
with all the different body types, and their abilities to what they can do in terms of what you want. So that's always nice.
And again, of course, with the tight end position, you have to take into consideration that generally they're used sparingly at the collegiate level.
Yes.
You actually got an opportunity to see what these guys can do playing in what amounts to a West Coast offense where the tight end is prioritized in the passing game, and you can see they have the chops. Whether they're the inline guy or whether they're more of a move tight end, you can see that they have the necessary ability to make plays in the passing game in particular. So before we turn the page on the offense, we got to talk about the offensive line, man. I spent a lot of time focusing on the offensive line this particular Senior Bowl. I don't know that I've ever spent as much time focusing on just the nuances. And then, of course, I make no mistake about it. Unabashedly, that is the area from an evaluation standpoint that I feel I need to work on the most. You know what I'm saying? So I made it a point to really focus on some of the little details and adding tools to my toolkit in terms of determining how these guys can translate to the next level. But before I get into my diatribe, what did you think of the offensive line play as a whole, and then individual performances? Who helped themselves? Who are winners? Who are losers?
So as a whole, I don't think it was good. I just think they were going against guys who were just much better across the line when they were going against the defensive line. And I want to say this too. Some of the drills that they were doing were just different from years past in terms of what they, it wasn't just a ton of one-on-ones. There was 2-on-5. There was 2-on-2. It was just different looks, just different things that you saw, and I really liked and appreciated because you can kind of get a sense of those linemen in terms of their lateral movement, getting back, making switches on the games that they were playing up front, whether it be text or stunts and different things up front. It was neat that what they were doing, so I appreciate that from both coaching staffs. But in terms of individual performances, I'm going to start with the national team in terms of Andrew Stuber, and let me know down in the comment section if I butcher your name, because Michigan, that's what I do. I butcher names. I thought that if he was able to get his hands on you, get to his spot and get his hands on you, it was a wrap, and it didn't matter who it was.
Yeah.
A couple times I saw him get blown up, and I was like, oh, that's no. But if he was able to get his hands on you, it was a wrap. Zion Johnson. This was he was I'd say he was probably second in command in terms of top offensive lineman, just in terms of the week. And I want people to understand something too, because we didn't make mention of this, but people get moved around to different positions just to get tried out to see what they can do. And Zion was one of those. He's a guard, did some guard work, but he also played center. So he was kind of playing out of position. You could see it was a little uncomfortable for him, and he won some, he lost some. But I think he's going to be a guy that's going to go higher now that he played in this game. And I thought he I'm going to use one of your words, acquitted himself very well in terms of playing, whether it was guard or center. And you got to leave some leeway when those things happen, when you're getting moved from position to position to try you out, to because teams want to get a look at what that is, right? Or what you are.
But before you move on, I just want to interject with respect to Zion. The thing about the fact that they challenged him to play center was that Zion hasn't played center before. You know what I'm saying? And then he was getting extra work after the practices at center. You know what I'm saying? And considering that, it was a brand new position to him, he again acquitted himself very well. It was impressive. Like you said, he didn't win every single rep, but generally speaking, when he got his hands locked in and he was able to drop anchor, it was a wrap. It was a wrap. And to your point, I'm glad you mentioned that we saw some different things in terms of preparation as it pertains to what was going on with the offensive line. In seeing kind of those 3-on-2s and things of that nature, you also got a chance to see guys, can they get to that reach block? Because there's so much zone concepts these days. Little things like that, the offensive line play generally is hit or miss at the college level. And you can say that about the NFL as well, but certainly at the college level, there's oftentimes these guys aren't necessarily getting the coaching. They're just bigger than the guy across from them. They're stronger than the guy across from them. They're a 5-star, whatever the case may be. But they're so unrefined technically. But you got to see what these guys could really do, what they need to kind of work on because of the drills these coaching staffs put them through. And I really enjoyed that. And I think organizationally, if you're going to participate in the Senior Bowl, you got to put these guys through the paces. Absolutely got to put these guys through the paces. I say it all the time here, and this is kind of the mantra associated with our channel. The offensive line is the most important position group in the NFL.
Just like Zion Johnson, Cole Strange was another guy. I think he plays left guard for Chattanooga, and he was a guy who was being tried out at center and guard. And listen, I was talking a little greasy about him, because he has no gloves, and I'm like,
I love it. I love it.
I know you love it.
Got the old school cross bar cage.
You do.
And my man ain't got no gloves on, man. I love it. That's the aesthetic I'm talking about, man. That's the aesthetic. I want 90s aesthetic. You understand what I'm saying? None of this cute stuff, man.
None of the cute stuff. You know what? For the offensive lineman, I like it too. I just thought, I'm used to seeing linemen with gloves.
He needed tape on his hands. That's what he needed.
That's what he needed. You're right. You're right. Yeah, I thought he acquitted himself well, and he's coming from a smaller school. He's a smaller guy. And he got beat a couple of times again. Guy playing center, playing guard.
Travis Jones got everybody. Let's just call it.
I mean, come on. Now listen.
Got everybody.
Strange got him once in one of the reps I've seen.
Yeah.
But this is a guy who, I think that's gonna be a player soon. I just think this just needs a little bit more work, and it depends on what you're asking him to do. Is it gonna be center or is it gonna be guard? And I understand why they're putting him in there at center. He has the movement and to get off the line and that lateral movement that you want. But again, he is small. So, and I think if your smallest offensive lineman is playing center, I think you're okay because you can protect them.
You can protect them a bit. Yep. Yeah.
The guys who I thought didn't help themselves on this national team or hurt themselves is definitely Fordham's Nick. I'm going to kill his name. Nick Zakelj from Fordham. Yeah, listen, there's a couple of guys, and I'm going to talk about them, is they just let guys get inside of them. It got to the point where I'm like, all right, do we have 30-inch arms? Like, what's going on here? Like, it just kept happening, and that's one of the easiest, if not the easiest way to get beat.
Right.
It's just to get pushed back into the quarterback, back into the lap, and if you have that traditional style quarterback, play is over. You know what I mean? And it was, it's kind of unfair, man, because the guys they were going against I felt bad for them. Oklahoma's Marquise Hayes and Washington State's Abram Lucas. Those guys, I thought that is one of those where they would get pushed back, but then was able to kind of stand their ground, and then kind of start to make their hay in terms of pushing back the defensive linemen they were going against. Obviously, if this was against, the ballers, if you will, they didn't fare too well. But anyone else, they gave that ground two up, and then they were able to kind of recover And so, that's some things that they're going to have to work on, but you can see the talent that's there for those guys. And listen, I'm gonna let you take Trevor Penning, but I'm just gonna say this, man. Do the bully, bro.
Yeah,
the bully, and I love it, and I don't care.
Yeah, there's some nasty there. There's definitely some nasty there. I wanted to revisit Zion before we talk about Penning. What was most impressive was the fact that he took to playing the center position, despite not having any experience doing that, and really took on that challenge. And again, he demonstrated that he's capable. He's capable. I think if you can play him at guard, that's where you can play him. But the ability to also move inside to center and acquit himself there, I think that's really admirable and impressive. You know what I'm saying? It really solidified him in the first round. What really impressed me from a technical standpoint is how he resets his hands. Even if he gets beat initially, he's able to reset his hands, regain his ground, and then drop anchor and protect himself and ultimately the quarterback. So that type of advanced ability to, again, be able to kind of reset as far as your target, your punch is concerned, after the initial push from the interior defensive lineman is advanced. That's something that gets you on the field immediately and allows you to be successful, particularly when you're seeing guys for the first time. You don't really have a book on them. You know what I'm saying? These guys are wily vets, whatever the case may be. That allows you to really compete in the inside. Another guard that I thought was really surprised me, I wasn't necessarily familiar with him, was Southern's Tyree Carter. He's a guard through and through. He looks like one of those guys who just, you know what I'm saying? You put him at the OG and then let him do work. Phone booth kind of player. I thought he was impressive. The step up in competition wasn't overwhelming. I saw him win his fair share of reps. Of course, everybody gets beat from time to time, particularly in these one-on-one situations. But he's a player. And I expect to hear his name relatively early on day 3, and depending on how things work out, you could see him towards the end of the 3rd round. I really thought he made himself some money. And then, of course, you had Bernhard Raimann and Trevor Penning. Raimann and then, of course, Daniel Falele as well. Falele and Raimann, I'm sorry, guys. Those are not first-round guys, in my opinion, man. Falele has a problem with just, he's so big. He's 6'9", 380, because his pad level is going to be an issue. And getting to his landmark in pass pro is going to be an issue. He's not a bad 380. He probably needs to play a little bit lighter, but the weight looks good on him. It's not a sloppy 380. But when guys line up in that wide 9, I think he's going to struggle to get to his landmark. That being said, if he can get there, there's no getting around him. He's just too big. He kind of has that Orlando Brown thing going for him. So I expect to see him day 2. That's when I kind of expect to see him. Same thing with Raimann. Raimann's a little bit older. He's new to the position. Gentleman's from Austria. He was a footballer, as in soccer, but that sport wasn't necessarily physical enough for him. So he took the football and he has tools. He definitely has tools, but the polish isn't there. The polish isn't there, and I don't know that he's so gifted physically that I'm gonna say, oh, there's traits. I'm gonna bet on those traits per se. So again, I thought those two guys, the litmus test was, okay, are these borderline first round guys, or are these definitely day 2 guys? I came out of it under the impression that they're day 2 players. Penning, Trevor Penning, as you mentioned, the bully. He got a real mean streak, man. He's got a real mean streak, and he has some work to do as well. But the traits are there, man. The traits are there. When he comes out of his set, the power he generates from his lower body, he explodes into the defender, right? He jars the defender coming out of his stance, and that's impressive. Now, what he has to do is he has to marry up his lower body and his hands. His hands are all over the place. You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, that's going to get you in trouble in pass pro. But he's a finisher, and when he does get locked in, he's gonna let you know that he's there. You got to have at least one Trevor Penning on your team, man.
Excited about building up your teams. Take some of the top guys in the country, especially because you didn't necessarily get that opportunity.
Yeah, it's an awesome experience going against the top guys in the draft and being able to show I belong here and just continuing that and going forward and doing it again today.
What are you doing this offseason in order to adjust to that change of that confidence that you're expecting to see you guys in the NFL, and what you've seen the first couple days in terms of making sure that your hands lead, sleep up, and pass, allowing that inside? Are you working with anybody
got some dudes out there, so iron sharpens iron, honestly. So working with all of them and competing with them, it just makes my game better.
I think he's certainly a top 20 pick. I think he's locked that in because again, he has the traits, he has the mentality, and he's far enough along in his development that gives you the confidence to take him within those first 32 picks. You understand? So, yeah, man, that does it really for the national in terms of the offensive line. What do you think about the American team?
So for the American team, I'm gonna start with the guys I didn't like. I talked about it, like I said earlier, guys who allowed, defensive linemen to just get into them, into their pads, pressing them back. You got Cade Mays from Tennessee, I was very disappointed in, and Luke Fortner from Kentucky. It was just over and over. It was just they just allow guys to get into them. You can't play offensive line if you're gonna allow guys to get into your chest. Right? Darian Kinnard was another one that, if I'm not mistaken, he didn't get any treatment at center. But he was a guy who, listen, I think this is a guy who helped himself very much. He was one of my top offensive linemen going into the season. And I thought he proved himself in Kentucky, in Mobile. He's a guy who's played plenty of snaps. I think he's more of a run grader than he is a pass blocker, but we'll get there with him. And LSU's Ed Ingram. Let me see here. I got him down. What I got him down?
He was impressive. Ingram was impressive.
And Smith from Virginia Tech and Ingram from LSU. Those two guys were guys, again, kind of rinse and repeat from the national team, are guys who will give up ground, but guys who will fight back. And I thought they were actually better at it than the guys from the national team. They gave up a little less ground. And Ingram, I felt like the more he played, the better he got.
Yeah.
For me, and that was against anybody he went against. Anybody he went against.
Yep.
It was just.
You saw the confidence grow throughout the week.
Yes.
You saw the confidence grow. Yep.
It's like, hey, I'm not comfortable here. And then just as the week went on, he got more comfortable.
I thought Darian Kinnard, I think he's a right tackle, man. They played him at guard too, and he looked like a fish out of water. I would much rather prefer to see Darian Kinnard sit at right tackle, work through any of his inconsistencies, actually working with Duke Manyweather, as many of these top offensive linemen in the Senior Bowl, including Trevor Penning, are. And I think that goes along. I actually asked Kinnard about that, and his response was interesting, man. You could tell he had more, it seemed this way at least. I won't put words in his mouth, but it seemed like he had more respect for the work that he's been doing with Duke Manyweather than what he did with Kentucky's coaches.
Experience with Duke Manyweather, how's that been so far?
Duke's been a great help to me. Great insight in terms of the next level, competition-wise. Just training, that whole different mentality. It's a lot different than just going into a college weight room and just busting your ass. Everything has a purpose, everything has a meaning to it, and he's definitely teaching us that.
In terms of the development of the offensive line play at the collegiate level, it's not very good, man. It's not very good. Some guys, they're in better situations than others, where guys who actually know what they're doing in terms of being able to teach the finer points of your hand placement and footwork and how to generate that power and understanding how to anchor and reset your hands, whether it be a vertical set, 45-degree angle set, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? And Kinnard, he really spoke glowingly about Duke Manyweather with respect to that. So I think he'll continue to develop. But I thought there was a clear distinction in terms of his effectiveness, whether he was playing guard or tackle, and I think right tackle is his home. Ultimately, was impressed by Memphis's Dylan Parham. I thought he was another guard, not unlike Stuber for the national team, that was like, okay, all right, I could see you playing sooner rather than later. People will look at how dominant at times the defensive linemen, whether it be interior edge guys, were in terms of the one-on-ones, and then certainly during the game. But I thought there were some guys who certainly helped themselves. You actually have a couple, at least 2 first-round picks, I think, that were at the Senior Bowl this year in terms of the offensive line, including Trevor Penning and Zion Johnson.